hold fire. Okay, can you see, just to confirm, you can see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it, Darren.
Excellent. So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the COVID-19 Recovery Grants webinar from the London Business Hub. So my name is Darren Balcombe. I'm the Deputy CEO of Capital Enterprise. I first of all wanted to thank you for joining the webinar this morning to learn more about the grant scheme. Before we kick off, I wanted to outline what you can expect to hear from me over the next hour. So here's the agenda. We'll kick off with some introductions. We'll explore a little bit more around the grant funding scope and the detail. We'll talk a bit more about the eligibility, and we'll move into grant funding requirements, and then how do you actually go about submitting the application, what happens post-application, and then throughout this presentation, and including at the end, we'll be stopping and pausing to take on your questions as well. So as previously mentioned, please do use the Q&A function on here. Okay, so first of all, a bit of housekeeping. And so due to the number, hang on, just bear with me. There we go. Sorry, due to the number of participants, you are all unfortunately muted, but as mentioned, please do use the Q&A function. We'll endeavour to answer and respond to all of your questions. If not here during the webinar, then we'll be in touch afterwards. And then so we'll also populate the FAQs as a record on the London Business Hub website as well. And then also just to mention, and it has just previously been said, that this will be recorded and it will be made available on the London Business Hub website later as well. Sorry, just having a few issues there with moving on to the next slide, which is probably the most basic of functions that you need in a webinar, but we've cracked it. So by the end of this webinar, which should take 1 hour, you have a better understanding of the scope of the competition, you understand the process and criteria, you should understand the application requirements, and then most importantly, you should be clear on what is expected from you in order to apply and access this funding. So over the next few slides, I want to highlight a bit more of the context, the detail and scope for the grant scheme. So the growth hubs who play a key role in supporting businesses have seen an increase in the number of businesses requesting advice and support. And then so in response to that, additional funding has been made available through the ERDF Growth Hub project. So ERDF is the European Regional Development Fund, and Capital Enterprise, which is the organisation that I work for, we've been appointed to administer and manage the direct grant scheme. So essentially there's two funding pots which have been made available, one for SMEs in the visitor economy sector and one for SMEs in the wider economy. So essentially all other sectors. So to share more about the fund itself, the London LEP, which manages the London Business Hub, has the following funds to allocate. So in the visitor economy pot, there's £377,210. In the wider economy, there's just over £1 million. So there's £1,081,112. So SMEs will have access to grants of between £1,000 and £5,000. And when applying, you will be asked to what extent your business is reliant on the visitor economy. And so depending upon your response, you'll be assigned to either the visitor economy pot or the wider economy pot. And when we talk about visitor economy, we're basically talking about businesses that are tourism related. It is important to note and stress that businesses may only apply once to the grant scheme, and multiple applications from the same SME will not be accepted. So what are the grants all about? So the purpose of the grants is to help businesses impacted by COVID, to help diversify and adapt. They are to help businesses respond positively to COVID-19, and the way in which they're, the goal of doing that is to support the purchase of either of equipment, or technology, or to support you to get professional advice to help get your business back on track. So just to share some key points on the grant before I talk about the application process, and I may repeat myself throughout, but there are some key points to note. So this grant is 100% of the money is coming from the European Regional Development Fund, and there is no obligation for businesses to contribute financially. So it's 100% contribution grant fund. As part of the application, businesses will be asked to provide a quote for any work or purchases they intend to use the grant for. And the big thing to stress, and I will stress this throughout, that grant payment is made in arrears. So for example, if you are successful, businesses will need to pay for the work or goods first of all, and then claim the money back once the project is completed. And now there is a time limited aspect to this, that all of that needs to happen within 1 calendar month. So the timescales we appreciate are very short, and that's why on applying, you need to be able to consider your personal circumstances, the business circumstances, and to see if this is an actual fit. Are you able to do the things that is needed to access the grant? So now I will highlight the process, including some of the timelines and actions to be taken. So applications open tomorrow at 10:30. Just checking, it is tomorrow, Friday the 16th is tomorrow morning. A link to the full application will be made available on the London Business Hub website. And to stress that businesses will be selected via a competitive process. So applications will be reviewed on a first come, first served basis. They will be assessed and prioritised based on the need and impact that they're able to evidence through their application. And then also we will work to ensure that grant recipients supported by this funding also reflects London's diverse business community. And on our behalf, we will endeavour to communicate a decision back to you within 10 working days of submitting an application. So to talk more about the process, once assessment has been made, all applicants will be notified of an outcome. Either positively or negatively, you will still get a response from us notifying you. So for those that are successful, you will receive a grant offer letter, and it will be sent to you electronically. It will be sent via email, and we require an e-signature from the applicant, from you. So again, to mention, successful applicants will have the 1 calendar month from the date of the grant offer letter. So the grant offer letter is really important. That essentially starts a stopwatch. So within that calendar month, you need to be able to purchase and receive either the support or the items that the grant has been approved for. And then you need to submit a grant payment claim back to us. And that is what is needed to happen within that 1 calendar month. And when we talk about a grant payment claim, you need to evidence that you've actually spent the money. So once a claim has been received by us and it's been approved with all the relevant financial evidence, payment will be made to you within 5 working days. So a few more do's and don'ts on the application. So grants cannot retrospectively fund an activity that has already started. So your application must include a quote for the activity you wish the grant to fund, but you can't commission work until your application has been confirmed as successful and you have received that grant offer letter. Please don't go off and spend without any form of indication that you've been successful. It's really important. And so the application process, it will be temporarily paused depending upon the volume of applications and the amount of funding that is remaining. So we have a limited pot. We feel that this grant fund will be oversubscribed. We have a lot of applications. So we will pause the funding process to make assessment within that pool. And if there is remaining funds, we will reopen. And so we will give you 1 week's notice to notify you of when the application process will be reopened. And we do that through a number of different ways via the London Business Hub website. And then we'll also push that out via social media as well. So again, this is to reiterate that this is a competitive process. Applications will close once we hit a limit, and assessment will be made from that pool of applications we've received. And so applications will be prioritised based on those who can best demonstrate a clear impact of COVID on your business, that the proposed, so you need to be able to explain and define the proposed activity or intervention to address the impact of COVID. And then you need to be able to detail how the proposed activity will positively impact your business. So either through the adaptation of products, of services, to help meet customer needs, to help your business build resilience, or to minimize the future business interruption. It might be a good point to check on if there are any questions at this point. I don't think I can actually see them from my console, but are there any questions that have come through that are worth raising at this point?
Yeah, there are a few people who are asking if there's a deadline for the grant.
That is a good question. So I guess the key date is tomorrow at 10:30. As mentioned, we do expect a large number of applications, and we have a limited pot of money. So we will be pausing and stopping applications based on the number of applications that we receive. So there isn't a hard and fast cut-off date, only that it's more dependent upon how many applications we receive.
Mm-hmm. There's a question that asks, can the COVID grant applications, do they have to be for only one thing, or can it be for multiple services / products?
That's a really good question, and I will get onto that. But it's important. The most important thing is the supplier. So through this grant application, we're only allowing one supplier. So you could potentially have a mixture of items, technology, plus software or services, consultancy, but it will need to come from the one supplier. So multiple items are allowed, but there's a number of different factors, and that is that it doesn't exceed £5,000. That's the main factor. You can't exceed £5,000 in total, and that it is procured through the one supplier.
Okay, great. Someone is asking if the lead time for the project is longer than 1 month. So if the project can't be completed within the 1 month you mentioned, do they have to pay everything in advance then, or can they wait until the...
Unfortunately, the services, so for example, if you're receiving professional consultancy, you will need to have received that consultancy, the advisory, within that calendar month. So the project needs to be completed within that calendar month, and you would need to have paid for those services within the calendar month as well.
I'm just going through the questions, Darren. Sorry.
That's fine. If you maybe one more and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
Or not. There's more.
There is. Yeah. Sorry. There's way more than one.
Yeah.
So someone asking if you get a quote you send to with your application, but then you decide to go with a different provider, is that a problem for the application?
That's a really good question. We can only, there's two things that need to happen there. We can only judge and make assessment on the application that's submitted. As follow-up with the grant offer letter, we will then check in on to double check that the information that you've supplied and the supplier that you intend to use will be the same. So allow me to follow up on that. That is a really good question. The intention, the hope would that it is the same, and we there are kind of checks along the way to ensure that. But then if there is a change, we need to get back. So as mentioned, we have got a note of all the people that are asking the questions, and we will go back individually to respond to those questions. And then also we would curate those questions and put them on the FAQs as well. So allow me to get back on that one. Okay, so we will move on to there will be another opportunity to stop for questions shortly as well. So thank you for that. So let's move on to talk about eligibility. So the next series of slides will talk about eligibility. And because we're dealing with EU funding, the regulations we need to follow are quite tight and prescriptive. And so I'll do my best to help steer us through it. So just looking at these statements, so applicants essentially need to be able to positively answer yes to these statements. If you can't answer yes, or if you can't answer positively, then you unfortunately will be ineligible for this grant scheme. So what we are looking for are businesses that are based and operational in Greater London, and that could be through your London trading address, a trading address in London, or a registered address. You do need to be defined as an SME by the EU standards. So that is that you have less than 250 employees, you have less than a 50 million euro turnover, or a balance sheet of less than 43 million. You do not hold 25% or more capital or voting rights in another business. Likewise, another business doesn't hold 25% or more capital or voting rights in your business. And a key part of this, and this may many businesses may fall down on it, but it's really important that business has started trading on or before the 1st of March 2019 and is still trading. And through the application will be, there's evidence that you'd need to submit to support that. Your business will need to have been adversely impacted by COVID. And again, for many people that haven't had experience with EU, the idea of state aid is quite a new concept. But your business must not have received a total of 200,000 euros state aid in the past 3 years. So just quickly, if I can just tell you what state aid is. So state aid is it means any business or training support or grants that have been provided by and funded by the UK government or the European Union, essentially to help that business improve its position in the market. And we call that the de minimis regulation. So under the de minimis regulation, businesses can receive up to 200,000 euros in any rolling 3-year period. So as a result, as part of this application, you are asked to declare if you've received any de minimis state aid from UK government or European funded projects in the last 3 financial years. So if you have received state aid in the past, you will normally will have received some form of notification stating the value of that support. And then so as part of this grant scheme, we will also issue you a statement when we send a grant offer letter with an estimation of how much state aid you will receive. And then when we pay you the grant, we will send you a confirmation of the actual state aid value as well. So just a bit of a sidetrack there on what state aid is. So you must be able to confirm that the activity and items that you're applying for is to assist with your recovery, with your COVID recovery plans. It can't be just business as usual. Can't be related as well, specifically can't be related to the procurement of PPE, so personal protective equipment, or connected to social distancing, for example. It must be vital to progressing, so the grant that you're applying for, it must be vital to progressing the activity that you're applying for. So meaning that it wouldn't be possible, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, wouldn't be possible without the grant support. And again, this is really important, that the project that you're applying for cannot have already started. And it cannot have started before the grant offer letter has been issued as well. So I know there's lots of can'ts and shouldn't, but again, it's laid down by the funders, and so for us, we need to make sure that we adhere and you adhere to those regulations. So only applicants who complete a full application and supply all the evidence will be considered for a grant. We appreciate when you get to the grant application phase, there are lots of questions and you will be asked to submit a lot of evidence. Unfortunately, we can only consider those who do not only complete the questions, but do supplement the questions with the evidence to support what they're saying. So as mentioned, businesses can apply for 100% of the costs. And again, to repeat ourselves, it will be paid in arrears. And so businesses must be able to accept that the grant offer and purchase and receive the support items that the grant has been approved for, and send payment evidence back within the calendar month from the date of the grant offer letter. So again, at the very beginning, you'll be asked, can you confirm, can you do this, before you can actually proceed into the application. And again, it's important that businesses have a dedicated bank account for the business. That is a prerequisite that we're asking for. Sorry, I just seem to have lost control. Here we go. Just bear with me. Okay, so to continue on eligibility. So all businesses will be asked to supply a standard industrial classification code, a SIC code, as part of the application. And so let me just explain what a SIC code is. So a SIC code is a 5-digit standard industrial classification code. It's used to identify business activities for companies operating within the UK. If you don't know your SIC code, you can find it on the gov.uk website, and that will be included in the application. It will also be included in the London Business Hub website as well. Okay, and so for tourism-related businesses, you can visit the FAQ page on the London Business Hub website. You can also find SIC codes which match those listed by the funders. So the funders have shared eligible SIC codes for those who they consider to be in the visitor economy, eligible for the visitor economy pot. So if you're curious, you can visit the FAQ page to see a list of all of the SIC codes which classify as the visitor economy. So some businesses that are not eligible for ERDF support, and so unfortunately we can't accept applications from the following sectors. So if you are one of these sectors, unfortunately ERDF ruling defines that you're not eligible to proceed with the applications. So any businesses working in the fisheries and aquaculture, businesses working in the processing and marketing of agricultural products, shipbuilding, schools and school-age educational establishments, insurance companies, and primary production such as coal or steel, synthetic fibers, and then banking as well. Before I move on, I know that we've covered, there's quite a bit there on eligibility. I wondered if there were any questions connected to eligibility. What I don't want to do is to take individual questions on, am I eligible? I think if you're confused about eligibility, we do have a general inquiries email address, which I'll share at the end. And we have a telephone hotline that goes live when the application page goes live as well. So we may be able to help you individually, but I'm hoping you can interpret the guidelines and criteria to make an assessment as to whether you're eligible or not. But I just want to open up to see if there are any questions at that point as well.
On eligibility, there's not that many questions, to be honest.
Okay.
But I've got other questions if you want.
let's do it. Yeah, let's see.
So there is a question that has come back quite often, is regarding VAT.
Okay.
So how is VAT handled? Or does the...
Yeah, that's a great question. And maybe I should just answer it here. I've got the slide on, you can see on the slide deck. So the limit is £5,000. So that it's very much dependent upon if you are VAT registered. You will be asked, if you're VAT registered, you will be asked to share your VAT number, registration number as well. So if you are VAT registered, then in the application to include the net figures. So that means excluding VAT when listing the cost of your items. Mm-hmm. If you are not VAT registered, then include the VAT in the cost of the items that you're looking to the grant to cover. I appreciate it. Maybe that should have been one of the first ones that we listed there, if that was one of the many questions, but hopefully that goes some way to answering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually I can see from your slide there's quite a few questions that are going to be answered when you go through it. So we might just want to...
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So shall I continue?
Yeah, just continue, and then we can just, if you have an answered question at the end, I will go through everything that you haven't answered. Yeah. Okay,
awesome. So then let's just focus on the grant itself and how it can be used, how it can't be used. So hopefully we've covered VAT. So it very much depends on if you're VAT registered or not. If you are VAT registered, include the net. If you're not VAT registered, then include the VAT in the cost of those items. So the grant must cover 100% of the cost or of the activity or the services that you're procuring for. In terms of, I think I mentioned earlier, the grant will cover costs made to one supplier. And again, the grant claim must not exceed 5,000 in total. So we can't accept multiple suppliers. And in terms of the 100% of the cost, the grant cannot be used to part fund expenditure. So if the activity or support to be undertaken exceeds £5,000, for example, you cannot part fund, you cannot use the grant to part fund payment and for the business to pay the remainder. That won't be eligible for this grant. Okay, so what can I use the grant for? So professional services. So eligibility for the visitor economy and the wider economy applications are the same. So the grant must be specific to the business. It's really important that the services that you receive are specific to your needs. And the grant can only be used to help the business to respond to the impact of COVID-19. That's why it's really important in the application that you share what the impact has been to your business. So just run through some of the eligible examples of specialist consultancy support, for example. So that includes HR professional services, legal professional services, IT professional services, support with product development or product diversification, support around strategic development, support around finance and restructuring, marketing consultancy services and planning, and new markets research and development. So you can also use the grant to purchase minor equipment, and there are two key things to consider when considering equipment, and that is that they must support either the adoption of new technology or business process in order for you to continue delivering or diversifying the business activity in response to COVID, or it must support the adaptation of existing technology or existing business processes in order to continue the delivery or to diversify the business activity in response to COVID-19. So the rules are quite clear on what the grant cannot be used for. So I'll just list out here, so you can see the slide deck here. So the grant cannot retrospectively it can't fund retrospective activity or purchases, as I mentioned earlier. It can't fund training. It can't fund building works. Capital items over 5,000 are not applicable. It cannot support businesses with working capital, and likewise it can't support to fund the payment of wages. It can't be used to purchase equipment and consumables associated with PPE and the social distancing measures. And it can't fund small-scale building works that respond to the physical changes to implement social distancing as well. And also, it can't fund core costs, so core organisational costs. And the examples here, such as aircon adjustments to address air circulation, or personal storage, or lockers, or bike racks, shower blocks. So there's a kind of an overview list of what the fund can't be used for. So now let's look at what you need to prepare ahead of an application. And the thing to stress here is that it's really important to take time. There's a lot of information that you'll need to share, and there's a lot of information that you'll need to gather ahead of making an application. And so if there are missing documentations, unfortunately, the application will be deemed ineligible. So you need to have all of the supporting documentation and evidence at the point you start your application. Check the FAQs, check back on the website, understand exactly what you need to start. If you don't have it, don't start. That's the advice. Make sure that you take the time in the preparation before you apply. So just to run through here, what is the information that you'll need to supply? So we'll be asking questions around the general business information, such as your registered address, your trading address, things such as your website, the date you started trading, information about the number of employees that you have. And also you'll be asked to provide evidence of your registered business status. So for example, certificate of incorporation, a letter from HMRC with your unique tax reference, for example. And if you're a registered partnership or social enterprise, you may have other evidence that would confirm your registration and your registration number as well. So you'll be asked to submit. And when I mentioned earlier, you'll be asked the information, but then you'll be asked to support your information with evidence as well. And so I mentioned earlier that you need to find your relevant SIC code. And again, you can find that on the FAQ page and on the application page itself. As mentioned, you will need a dedicated bank account for your business, and you will need to demonstrate that. You will need to send a bank statement from March 2019, and we use that to obviously to prove your identity. We use that to prove that you were trading. You said you were trading in 2019. We need to demonstrate that you were actually doing that. I mentioned before there was this state aid declaration. So if you have received state aid, you need to be able to document and list out, itemize what you've actually received and the totals. And then from a financial perspective, you'll be asked to supply information around your business turnover from your last financial year and your current financial year to date. So you'll be asked to upload your profit and loss summaries from April 2019 to March 2019. If you don't use a fiscal year, that's fine. We just need your most recent data. Again, and then to upload your balance sheet from April 2019 to March 2020, or your most recent data that you do have. And again, I mentioned earlier around the quotation, so you will need to submit that quotation from a supplier. So it's a good point actually to get onto suppliers. I'm assuming there'll be some questions around what a quotation looks like and you know, who is a supplier. So you can use any supplier you want, just as long as they are a business and that the service or product is eligible for grant funding and it's been pre-approved and is relevant to your recovery as a needs as a business. You know, we are the London Business Hub. Of course, we want to encourage you to use local, so London-based suppliers where possible. And as part of the selection of the supplier, you will be asked that the supplier is independent of you and that your business has no conflict of interest. So you'll be asked to sign and agree. There's a conflict of interest statement with regards to the selection of your supplier. So we talk about a quotation, and this information is available on the FAQ website. But this just details, when we talk about a quotation, what do we expect? What do we need to see? And so there's two things. Essentially, you'll have a quotation for services or a product purchase, and they need to include the supplier business name and address, the applicant's business name and address, so your business name and address, the description of the activity, service or product, the cost, so the individual cost and the total cost of that activity or product, and then also the date that the quote was provided. And again, just be very clear that the activity or product, the date cannot have already been commissioned or already have been started. That's really important to note. We can take screenshots of online catalogues, but again, you need to show very clearly what the item is. We'd like to see to have the web address included for the item. We need to see the cost of the item and then the date that the screenshot was captured as well. So hopefully that gives you a better understanding of what does a quotation look like, what is expected of you to send as part of the application. And then to move on to what can I do now to prepare for my application? So this is really important. So of course, you've got the eligibility criteria. You've got the business information. The next part is around explaining the need for the grant. Essentially, you'll be asked several questions and you'll be required to write an answer. And it's really important that you give as much detail as possible, as much evidence as possible to support your ask. So it's these answers that will be used to assess, for example, the impact of COVID-19 and how your suggested response is helping you to adapt and diversify. So please, where possible, use numbers, use evidence to support your statement, use examples, use details, because it's from these statements, it's from this we'll be able to define and assess what it is that you're trying to achieve. So there's a couple of items here that we'll just run through, the things that you need to include. So you do need to provide a brief overview of your business activity, your products and services. That's kind of generic, what it is that you do. But also you need to provide details of how your business has been affected by COVID. And so you need to include the details of either the issues or challenges that your business faces. You'll be asked to explain how your business plans to respond to the impact caused by COVID. And again, please use as much detail as possible, numbers. What is the financial impact, for example? You need to be able to justify how the grant-funded support will help you to reduce the impact of COVID. So how will it help you build resilience? How will it help your business to recover? Or minimize business interruption, for example. And then you'll be asked, so connected to the supplier, you'll be asked, for example, the rationale for choosing the supplier. It doesn't necessarily need to be the cheapest, but you do need to explain the rationale for explaining why you've made the choices that you have. So moving on to what happens after an application. So again, this is back on us. So we'll endeavour to communicate a decision within 10 working days of the application submission. And as mentioned, we do expect a high demand. And so the grant processing may take longer depending on the number of applications received, but we endeavour to work to those 10 working days. And then if you are successful, you will receive the grant offer letter detailing the amount, the timescales and the terms of conditions. And as mentioned earlier, we would need a signed response from you accepting the offer as well. And then it's over to you. You are then expected to receive those items, those services, pay for the goods that you've applied for in the grant, and then submit the evidence. So again, I said I was going to repeat myself, and I think hence the bold and underlined. We appreciate that the timescales are really short on this, and so it's really important that you consider if you are able to do what we're setting out here. That is, you have the 1 calendar month from the date of the grant offer letter to accept your grant offer, receive the activity, and evidence the activity. And as part of the grant offer letter, you'll be sent instructions with the link of how to upload payment evidence with the grant offer letter. So payment evidence, what we expect to receive back from you is a supplier's invoice. You will also need to send a copy of the bank statement from your dedicated bank account, evidencing that payment has left and been made to the supplier. So we need to see evidence of that payment being made. And once we receive that evidence, once we receive that information from you, we will endeavour to pay you within 5 working days of receiving that evidence and signing off that payment. So just a quick, we are nearing the end, but just a quick one on how to pay suppliers. So of course we're asking for evidence to show that you have made payments. So wherever possible, electronic payments should be made from your bank account to the supplier. On occasions where it's not possible, payment by check or business debit card are permitted. We expect for check payments to require a photocopy of the check payment and then supporting bank statement information. In exceptional circumstances, the use of a credit card may be approved. And it's just really important to note at this point that if once you've received a grant award letter, you intend to use a credit card payment, you need to contact us before doing so. So again, this information will be shared with the grant offer letter, but the email address, which is grantinquiry@capitalenterprise.org, you will need to speak with us beforehand because you will need to show that the balance has been paid in full with the payment to the card, with the card provider leaving your business bank account. So the payment needs to have cleared for the credit card before we can then issue the grant payment to you. So that's really important. Payments through PayPal are accepted, but only if the payment is taken directly from your business bank account. So the reason why we do that, we need to see evidence that the individual invoice has left your bank account. And the final thing on paying suppliers is that under no circumstances are payments for cash for invoices acceptable. So as mentioned earlier, we need a complete application. So unfortunately, if you have some information and not all, your application will be ineligible. So that's why I mentioned before you apply, please take the time to read through the evidence and what is expected of you before you start the application procedure. So is there support or someone I can talk to about the application process? The answer is yes. we can't provide a status update on your application, and unfortunately we can't guarantee the timescale due to the expected volume that we may receive. But if you do have questions around the application regarding the scheme, we have the grant inquiry at capitalenterprise.org open and available, so you can email your questions now. We do advise that you do check the FAQs first, but we also do have an inquiry line, which, as you can see here, there's a telephone number, which is 0208 144 1068. That will go live at 10:30 on Friday, so you can speak to a real person, if that's much easier than using email. So just to say, the telephone number again, 0208 144 1068. Don't call it now, but do wait until Friday at 10:30. Let's just check in to see if we have any questions. So I appreciate I've covered quite a bit of information and we are running out of time.
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions. There's one that has come quite a lot regarding state aid and what counts as state aid. So first of all, is the help from the government, like regarding furlough and the bounce back loans, do these count as state aid?
I don't, an off the cuff answer is no, but again, like any of the questions that any of the answers that I'm supplying, I would like to give you a written formal answer on FAQs. So anybody that's asked that question in the short term, in the immediacy, I will respond with an email to you, and then quite quickly put up on FAQs as well.
There also have a few people who asked, so for if the project cost exceeds 5,000, can they apply for a partial, like up to £5,000 for the grant and like a partial payment?
No, unfortunately not, no.
Some people also ask, so for example, if they get their quote and the quote comes in at £2,000, but then in the end the service or the product end up costing more for any reason, so for example they actually get invoiced 2,500, is that a problem to get the grant payment afterwards?
Yes, unfortunately we can only assign the grant to based on the application. So the agreement that we make, the grant funded agreement, is the agreement. And so if there's any deviation afterwards, unfortunately, we won't be able to increase the amount that we've allocated.
Great. Some people have asked, can the suppliers come from outside the UK or the EU?
That is a really good question. Allow me to revert back on that one. Because again, because we are using ERDF rulings, so I just want to double check that we are adhering to the right rulings on that. So yeah, allow me to get back. That's a really good question.
A few people have asked as well for examples of in which scenario like the grant payment would be refused after it's been, after they've provided the evidence, for example.
So I guess there's a number of things. So as mentioned, this is a competitive process. So what we are looking for, of course, in the first instance, we're looking for eligible companies and those that are eligible for the grant. So they can make they can satisfy eligibility, meaning they have a bank statement, they've been trading since March 2019. All of that criteria. And then separate to that, there's the judgment based on a number of different aspects in terms of the impact of COVID, the item that they're looking to procure or purchase, it may not satisfy in terms of an assessment. So again, this is competitively assessed. We're looking for those who where the impact will have the most impact to help support the recovery of the business. So it may be that items may just fall out of scope for example, it may be just a business as usual purchase. They may not be able to demonstrate that the thing that they're trying to purchase actually really is helping them to support and to recover. And so it may be that the items fall within an out of scope or ineligible category. So there's a combination of things. There's the eligibility, and then there's the ability to demonstrate that the item that or items or services that you're looking to purchase really do help you recover. So you need to be able to demonstrate that COVID has had an impact, what the impact is, and then how this is likely to support your return or your growth.
Thank you. Okay, there's quite a few people that asked, like, in terms of more practically for the application page tomorrow. There's quite a few people asking if everyone connects at the same time, is the website going to be able to handle it?
Good.
And yeah, and as well, just follow up on that, is there a timeout on the page? So do they have a set time to fill in all the applications? And are there kind of word count limits on answers to questions? Yeah,
really good questions. So there's a number of different factors on this. You've got the London Business Hub website where the URL will be hosted. We're hopeful that that won't crash. We have a URL which is linked to a separate platform, which is where you'll be directed to make the application. We're confident on both of those platforms that they can handle the traffic that we're expecting. With regards to the timeout, there is no timeout, but there is no return, if that makes sense. And so that's why we encourage you to have the information available. So we encourage you in one sitting to make the application. So you won't be kicked out because of overtime, but you're unable to save and then return. So the advice is in one sitting to make the application. And then the final question on word limit. So for that, the last bit that I just explained around the bit that is going to be assessed, there is word limits, and I think they range from between 100 to 200 words. I think the maximum limit is 200 words.
Thank you. Okay, there's quite a few people asking about sole traders as well. If are sole traders eligible in ERDF, or
they are if they fulfill. So if you look at the criteria, if you're able to fulfill, if you are a registered business, for example, then you fulfill and you are able to say yes to your eligibility, then yes.
Right. Okay, I'd just like to mention we have an incredible amount of questions, so I'm really sorry if we can't get to yours during the webinar, but we will have a copy of all the questions, and we will try our best to get back to you all individually if we haven't answered your questions right now.
Absolutely. So I appreciate we're out of time, but let me just finish with the additional support that is provided by the Business Hub. And so, I'm sure many of you have seen that the new platform, the new London Business Hub, it's available where you can find your impartial, practical advice on how to start, sustain, and grow your business. And they've recently launched a new raft of programs which will be relevant to many of the businesses that are on this call. And so let me just to quickly just run through them. So there's a Recover and Grow program, which is a business support program in partnership, which was formerly the CAS School, which is the business school, which supports SME leaders. There's the Property Advice Service that helps new and established SMEs to negotiate leases with free advice from property consultants. There's the Startup and Step Up program, which helps Londoners build their enterprise skills, which offers training, access to co-working spaces, and helps them to build new businesses. And then also separately, it helps support SMEs, so those who employ, to help them to increase the skill levels of their employees as well. There's a program called the Peer Networks, which provides 240 businesses with action learning peer learning group sessions and one-to-one support. And then there's the Mayor's Resilience Fund, which is £1 million package of innovation grants for SMEs as part of the recently announced London Resilience Fund. And then in addition to that, you've got the wraparound service, which was mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, around one-to-one advisor support and webinars on a whole host of topics. And then there's the investment readiness program as well. So helping support early stage businesses navigate the very tricky and difficult world of raising finance. That is it from me, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who's had the patience to sit through that. I understand that there will be lots of questions and queries as a result of the information shared. Just to reiterate, we will be going live tomorrow morning. And so if you do have any questions or queries or have put them through, we'll endeavour to get back to you today to answer those as well. So many thanks.
Just one last one, Darren, because quite a few people are wondering, because obviously the applications are open tomorrow and the webinar was today. So how long do you expect the process to be open for grant to be submitted? Not everyone has to submit it tomorrow at 10:30 if they can't get their quotes in, for example. It's
a really good question, and unfortunately it's one that I'm not able to answer, only because there is a limitation, a max level that we can initially accept, and that is very much dependent upon how many applicants we get through and receive. So if there's not many, then obviously the length of time that the application portal is open will be longer. You know, if there's a huge rush and we're inundated, then the likelihood is that the application will be closed much shorter. But to be honest, I can't give an answer on that, only because there isn't a hard and fast rule. We're kind of responding to the demand from businesses. Okay, thank you. And sorry, just one last one, because there's quite a few people that have asked. Is there a kind of a list of the questions that are actually going to be asked on the application form? I know you went through everything, but do you have like a downloadable form they could have a look at before the application's open tomorrow? Yeah, that's a really good question. Allow me to, if not, I'm not sure how it's formatted on the FAQs, but that is an action I can take, and I can share. So if you look back on the FAQs, I'll look to get that up on the website, a version of the types of questions. I think we list out the things that you'll be expected to share, but yeah, let me put those up. I think that'd be really useful. Thanks, Darren. And again, I understand we haven't answered all the questions, and I'm absolutely really sorry. There's a lot of them, so we will try and get back to you as soon as possible today, as soon as this webinar is over. So thank you, Darren, for your presentation. And next we do have Maria Gefter from the Greater London Authority, who's going to be talking about the Mayor's Resilience Fund. Maria, hi.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so let me just share my screen quickly. Bear with me. Okay, great. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. So just a quick presentation on the Resilience Fund. This essentially is a fund that we've set up as part of the COVID recovery planning. So I sit in the economic development team at the GLA, and the fund is, I mean, the name is a bit elusive. It's meant to be kind of a resilience, an innovation for resilience fund, where we want to connect, kind of bring together innovators, small businesses, charities, boroughs, together to create projects and new tools and innovations that will help London recover from the current crisis and to build London's resilience more broadly. So the program provides grants of up to 30,000 for consortia between small businesses and innovators, or charities and community groups and innovators, to essentially come up with an innovative solution that can help both improve organizational resilience, but as I say, also London's resilience more broadly. The idea is very much to enable kind of collaborations and joint kind of proposals to be submitted. So as we define innovators as tech startups, data science experts, developers, that can help organizations come up with an innovative way to deliver their services and products in these new circumstances. So in terms of the kinds of things that we're talking about, it's not necessarily kind of the exclusion to this is technology adoption of tried and tested tech, which has a bit of a, that's a bit of a different remit and opportunity and problem to this fund. This fund specifically tries to kind of enable the creation of new innovations and new tools that will help businesses and organizations bounce back from the current crisis. So the kinds of things, for example, that we'd be looking to fund would be projects that look at how you can improve supply chain resilience, for example, to prevent kind of, to make them essentially more resilient to future shocks. We all remember the fiasco with toilet paper, for example. Let's not let that happen again. Or just to kind of improve logistical resilience. That's kind of business specific. The fund has a very broad remit across a number of different organizations, and small businesses are certainly eligible to apply if they have kind of a specific challenge around, for example, supply chain resilience or another kind of resilience themed problem. So the fund kind of draws on the 8 key resilience stresses that are identified in the London Resilience Strategy, which was published earlier this year. In terms of, so we're looking to try to address a lot of these cross-cutting issues. Brexit is obviously one of them, identified as one of the key stresses facing London. So if, obviously everyone is worried about what impact that's going to have on business continuity. So keen to see kind of applications come through around that. In terms of the current process, at this stage, we open applications and kind of a light touch expression of interest process in September. And at this stage, we're looking for ideas and partners for the challenge, for the program, sorry. And this process is going to last until early December. Applying for this fund at this stage isn't the same as submitting an application and receiving money. It's a kind of a staged process where right now, we have these 8 core resilience themes that we're looking to address, but what are the specific challenges that businesses are facing, that organizations are facing, that this fund could help address? So we're looking for ideas and we're looking for partners. Over this period, we will work together with organizations to refine those ideas into a problem statement, a challenge that can then be published as a challenge to innovators looking for solutions. And that's going to happen in December this year. We then invite those innovators to join the program and be matched through a kind of structured engagement process together with the organizations that are the kind of what we're calling the resilience partners. And through that structured engagement process, they're encouraged to collaborate and work together on a proposal about how to tackle that challenge, how to improve that organization's resilience, and how to come up with a solution to that specific challenge. And that is the point at which they submit that updated proposal in January next year, January to February next year, and then that's when the 30,000 grants is awarded to then go on and deliver that work. So that's kind of the broad process. There's more information at this tech.london /resilience, and feel free to reach out to us at innovation@london.gov.uk. But yeah, just to reiterate that, this fund kind of looks to tackle kind of, key resilience challenges facing London. And we've had a lot of applications come through around technology adoption more broadly, in terms of I have this, this need to adopt a CRM, for example, or another technology adoption solution, another technology solution. This fund doesn't aim to kind of to help with that specifically. There are other funds, obviously, that support that, and I would like to draw attention to the mayor's Paid Forward London platform, where you can crowdfund and raise funds for your business, where you can also apply for up to 5,000 in match funding from the mayor to support you with technology adoption, but also to, if you need some extra funds to install measures to make your businesses more COVID secure. The fund kind of has a remit to support with that as well. But that's on the kind of condition that you raise 5,000 from the crowd and you apply, and you can get matched up to 50% of your target from the mayor. So I'm just going to stop there for now. I'm happy to take any questions. Sorry, shall I leave the details on?
Thanks, Maria. Yeah, if you want, just to give it a second to people to make sure they can take them down, but we will be sending your presentation afterwards anyways as well. Thank you, Mary. I'm just checking if we've got any questions relating to that, because I think you've answered the one we received, meaning this is not for companies that so are you talking to tech companies or SMEs that need to that need the technology to help them be more resilient? So you're not talking to companies that need to find new tech to help their business?
Yeah, so it's I mean, we you know, in terms of funding innovations, we are talking about tech and digital and data, but I guess we're thinking about, you know, innovation and not in terms of, you know, more about advanced technologies. So machine learning and AI and sort of Internet of Things and that kind of spectrum of technology, as opposed to tried and tested technologies that you can just go out and find a supplier for, like CRMs and e-commerce and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Great. Someone's asked, does it need to be a consortium or can it be a single company?
So by consortium, I mean, it would be a consortium between the resilience partner, which could be a small business, it could be a charity, it could be a social enterprise, and the innovator. So that would have to be a collaborative project. That's what I mean by consortium, but you know, sort of companies are more than welcome to kind of bring additional partners on board as well.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. Just checking. Sorry, I'm just going through your questions. I think that's it. I've got a question which is a bit. So someone's working on new product innovation for food products using technologies for production to get innovative, healthy ingredient to support immunity. Would that be considered as something kind of eligible?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Great. So does the sum have to be shared between the innovators and resilience partners, or if we have the idea and solution, can you apply on your own?
So we would have to fund a collaboration in the sense that, you know, there's two separate stages where there's the problem owners, so to speak, the resilience partners who have the challenge, who have that problem that needs solving, and then putting it out as an open call to innovators for anyone to apply. But the 30K grant is shared between the partners involved, and it's kind of up to them in terms of staff time committed, resources committed to decide on that split.
Okay. So, okay, what was the, sorry, I think someone just asking, what was the last fund called that you mentioned about 5K matched funding from the mayor?
Yeah, so that's called Paid Forward, Paid Forward London. So it's just london.gov.uk/paid forward. If we can circulate those details as well afterwards, I think that would be helpful. But yeah, so it's a crowdfunding platform, and we're providing currently 5,000 in match funding through that platform. And yeah, happy to share the link to that afterwards.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're just about out of time. So if there's any questions we haven't answered, we will I'll forward them to you, Maria. Maybe you can help answering them. But thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
So we're just going to take a short coffee break until 11:30 now, and after that we will have Richard Wigley from Grant Trade. I will talk about grant funding, and as well we'll give you advice on how to best practices on writing grant applications. So we will see you back at 11:30.